Hey guys, in this video I'm going to smoke up some baby back ribs on the Pit Boss 456D pellet smoker. I'm going to cook it at about 225 degrees Fahrenheit for about 4 to 6 hours. We're going to finish them off with some Kosmo Q pineapple heat rib glaze. So this is going to be awesome, it's going to be delicious, and I'm super excited about it. So stick around, let's get to the video. Now the first thing we do with any ribs is we need to unpackage it obviously, and we need to remove this membrane on the back of the ribs. This membrane prevents all the smoke from penetrating through. It's also going to prevent the salt and the rub from penetrating into the meat. So the easiest way to remove the membrane on the back of the ribs is with a paper towel, because it helps you grip the slippery membrane and pull it off. So usually what I like to do is I like to start at one of the corners and just get some of it peeled up. Like this. Try to use the back of the knife to kind of pull up the membrane a little bit. And then once you get kind of a little finger hold there, then that's when you switch to your paper towel. And I'll just use a small piece so you guys can see what I'm doing. And you just grab onto it as best you can. And then you just slowly tear it off. I'll show you that so it's easier to see. Just peel it off. You're just peeling it off like it's a candy wrapper. These delicious ribs are being unwrapped, and you're gonna dig into them in 4 to 6 hours. Now that the membrane's off, I've transferred the ribs onto a cutting board, and I've done that just to keep things a little bit cleaner when I'm applying the rub. You'll notice that I put a glove on. I'm gonna touch the meat with this gloved hand, and I'm going to, with my clean hand, touch the rub so I don't have any cross-contamination issues. So now I'm gonna start applying the rub. This is a Kosmo's Q dry rub called Honey Chipotle Killer Bee. It's got pretty good sugar content. The second ingredient is salt, so it's got a lot of salt in it. And this is what we're gonna do to kind of dry brine the ribs before we put them on the smoker. This is one of the first fundamental principles of great barbecue. You wanna brine, either wet brine or dry brine your meat before you put it in the smoker, because it's going to allow it to retain moisture and it's going to make it much more flavorable. So let's start applying some of this rub right now. And after we're done applying it, we will let it sit at room temperature for probably about an hour, just to get a little dry brining action going on and help temper the meat, let it come up to temperature before we put it on the smoker so that it doesn't have such a long temperature journey to get up to the temperatures that we need it to get to. Okay, so now we're flipping it over. And the reason that we did the back side first is because we don't want to do this side first and then flip the rub over and get all the rub sort of squished and wet on the bottom, because this is the presentation facing side and this is what people are going to see. So we want to keep that all nice. So we're going to evenly coat this. This is where it's better to be a little bit more careful because, as I said, this is the presentation side. Okay, there we go. Now we're gonna let this sit at room temperature. It's gonna dry brine a little bit and we'll come back in 1 hour. All right, these ribs have been dry brining for about an hour now, and you can see that the salt has melted down into the meat. It's drawing out that moisture and then it's sucking it back in, and that's what's gonna make it super tender and really flavorful. We've also got some other nice spices on the outside from this Kosmo's Q rub. It's got some sugar in it. It's got some great stuff. So I'm just gonna blast it with a bit more rub just to draw out a little bit more of that moisture right before I put it onto the smoker. And there we go. All right, so I'll give you a close-up. Look at how red that is. Look at how all the spices have sort of pulled out that moisture. They're mixing in with it. Looks really good, and I haven't even put it in the smoker yet. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to put these ribs in the Pit Boss 456D. Now, as I'm putting a rack of ribs inside of the Pit Boss, I'm putting it as far to the right as I can, because that's the side that's the cold side. It's furthest away from the actual heat source, and I want these ribs to cook pretty evenly. So I don't want to put one half of them directly over the heat source, the flame, and then the other half on the cold side. I'd rather have them all on the cold side. So that's going to help them cook more evenly. And about every hour, I'm going to open this up again and I'm going to switch them around so that the cold side of the ribs is now facing the actual heating element, and that's gonna help them again cook more evenly. At 225 degrees, it'll probably take about 2 to 3 hours for your ribs to get to 165 degrees internal temperature. At that point, the ribs will hit what's called the stall. The stall happens when the moisture evaporating from the meat cools it off faster than the smoker can heat it up. which means the temperature stops rising. So when your ribs hit the stall at around 165 degrees, you'll want to apply a thin layer of rib glaze or sauce and then let it set up in the smoker for about 10 minutes. After that, it's time to wrap your ribs. Wrapping is the second fundamental pillar of great barbecue. It helps retain moisture and helps the ribs power through the stall and cook faster. For this cook, I'm wrapping in butcher's paper, but you can also use aluminum foil. Lay out the ribs on the butcher's paper and drizzle them with some liquid. In this case, I'm using some melted butter, Worcestershire sauce, and apple cider vinegar. Now wrap the ribs up tightly and put the ribs back on the Pit Boss 456D. After another hour, we should be at about 4 hours total cook time. Check the temperature in multiple places of the ribs at this point. It should be around 175 to 180 degrees Fahrenheit between the bones. If it's not, let it cook a bit longer wrapped. Once it hits 175 to 180, take the ribs out of the wrap, glaze them again, and let them smoke for another hour unwrapped. After you unwrap the ribs, they'll probably stall out at whatever temperature they were at when you unwrapped them, and they'll stop rising in temperature. So that's why it's important to only unwrap them when they hit 175 to 180, which is your target temperature. Hitting your target temperature is the third fundamental pillar of great barbecue. If you hit your target temp with ribs, then you should have something that comes off the bone easily when you bite into it, but it isn't fall off the bone and mushy. After an hour, we'll be at 5 hours total cook time. At this point, we're going to check the temperature again in multiple places between the bones. They should be around 180 degrees. So again, it should hold relatively stable at around 180. Then do 2 more tests. First, bend the ribs to see how flexible they are. They should bend in a semicircle and be pretty flexible but not falling apart. Second, look at the bark. If cracks start forming a bit when you bend it, then that's a good sign. If you pass all 3 of these tests, then the ribs are done. Now the last step and the fourth and final fundamental pillar of great barbecue is to let the ribs rest. Resting is going to allow the meat to retain more moisture and it'll be much more tender. For ribs, I let them rest for about 30 minutes. All right, these ribs have come off the Pit Boss 456D and I've let them rest for about 30 minutes. And now it's time to cut into them and take a taste. So let's do a quick recap first. First, I cooked it in total about 5 hours at 225 degrees Fahrenheit. The first 3 hours were uncovered, and then I glazed it a little bit with the pineapple glaze from Kosmo's Q, which I have here. And then I wrapped it in butcher's paper. I put some other stuff in there just to add some additional moisture. Wrapped it for an hour until it came up to an internal temperature of about 180 degrees Fahrenheit. Took it out, put it back on the grill, glazed it again with the Kosmo's Q pineapple heat, and then I took it off, let it rest for 30 minutes, and this is the final product. So we're gonna dig into it now. I'm super excited about this because this looks really good. So let's bring you over here and take a look at it as I'm cutting into it. Now let's look for a straight cut here because I wanna get a really nice cut right in the middle. So we can see that the bones are kind of going a little bit sideways. This is normal for baby back ribs. All right, so we'll cut it right about here in between the bones. There we go. And I'll make another cut right there. Okay, so this is it. You can see there's a nice big pink smoke ring all along the outside. Nice and tender on the inside. If I squeeze a little bit, you can see the moisture coming out. So I'm gonna take a bite of this. Wow, it's really sticky from that pineapple heat Kosmo Q rib glaze. So, whew, this looks good. Let's take a bite of it. That's good. Wow. So if you can see, it came off really easily. You can see the bite marks. So that's what we're kind of looking for. We're not looking for fall off the bone. We're looking for something that comes off easily in your mouth once you bite into it. But this is really good. Let's take a bite of the other side here. Yeah, that's some good baby back rib there. That's really good. Man, this is good. Now, this is actually surprising because when I first tasted this Kosmo's Q pineapple heat, it was pretty hot, and I thought it was gonna be a little bit too hot on the ribs, but the flavors actually mellowed out a little bit, and you're getting a lot of that sweet pineapple flavor. You're getting the heat, but it's not an overpowering heat. So I think that a lot of people will actually have a palate that can kind of accommodate this, and if people are averse to spice or anything like that, then they could probably eat this as well, because it's not really that hot. It's not super hot. So yeah, this is really good. I like it. All right, guys, I hope you liked this video and I hope you found it useful. If you liked this video, please hit that like button and hit that subscribe button if you're not already subscribed, so you can stay up to date on all my latest videos. I'm gonna have a lot more videos that are gonna be focused on the Pit Boss 456D in particular. So if you have that unit, then you're gonna wanna subscribe and follow me so you can see all of my latest recipes. All right, guys, happy smoking.